This is Lansdowne Roar, the voice of the fans. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. David Forde. Welcome.
Thanks a million, lads. Great to be here today.
Oh, great to have you. Thanks for coming on. Of course, we're here to talk about your Ireland career and a fascinating Ireland career. Your road to getting the call up and being the eldest international debutant for the Republic of Ireland. But also, we're here to talk about your brand new book, Being the One, which is out now in shops, and there is a link to buy it on the video in the description as well. So do check it out. We've read it, and yeah, I have to say, I mean, when I've read many football books, autobiographies. Some of them are very bit superficial, shall we say? But with Being the One, I think we can all agree on it that there's a lot of layers to it. It's a very deep book. It's a very emotional book.
Yeah.
And it really is like, for example, I've never read a penalty being described so thoroughly in my life.
yeah. I was wondering where you were going with that. I
Yeah.
was like, what's he going to say here?
Yeah, like the gloves and the feelings of the gloves. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I read it over a couple of days. One of the benefits of being on the tube here in London,
Yeah.
you can read your book. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Just got to ask, like, and I ask this about everybody when you write a book, is like, why now? And I don't mean that in a
Well, it's only coming out now. I actually started to begin to write it when I got into the Irish side. Um, I was kind of like at a stage where, right, it was a lot of things starting to happen so quickly. It was Millwall playing the championship, then Ireland comes along, so expectations, a lot of different pressures, bigger wages, so many kids, family, all those different elements in it. And because my career I was always a late bloomer in everything that I did, and my career started to come to me late in my life. I started to look at going down the avenues of writing a book and how therapeutic it actually was, and not just in terms of from a therapeutic point of view, but from a catalytic point of view, how it could actually bring me that sense of transformation and kick me personally down the road. So I used to meet a gentleman, start ghost writing it and different elements of it, and it was great because when I'd be sat in the Portmarnock Hotel, we'd just go down and have a coffee, and I'd be just telling my story, from where I grew up, when I grew up, and like that. Um, we worked together for, geez, I can't remember, maybe a year. And he had his kind of ideas and where he wanted to bring it. However, I different kind of view on the book. And like what you said, I didn't want to write something that was superficial.
Yeah.
That sense of, oh, you tell 10 stories and make a book out of it. I wanted to put some real thought and process into it.
It's a bit of an emotional journey, isn't it, as well, and an inner journey. You start off this angry young man, bit of an angry adult, but then at the end of it, you find peace and inner peace and outer peace and sort of contentment.
Yeah, it's totally unorthodox for a football story and a football journey, when talk about so many different elements of that, of trying to find that part of myself, battling with universal themes that everybody goes through, self-doubt, not being good enough, thinking people are better than us, thinking that other countries and nations are better than us, all those different elements. And I was like, right, I'm doing the best job in the world. Everyone would give their left hand
Yeah.
to play professional sport and football. And yet, even though there was huge parts in it, so I was really battling with that sense of, right, my ambition was, I want to play for Ireland, I want to play, professionally in the UK. Although I did get to do those things, but yeah, on the inner world, on the outside world, it looked, yeah, everything was great and everything was rosy, but there was a whole load of baggage, there was a whole load of um, uh, hurt and pain, I suppose, in there that I never really started to actually look at. I just thought, right, just push it away, just keep focusing on playing games. And then I get injured, things start to catch up with me. And I start to look at, right, this needs to be looked. So looking back at it in terms of where mental health and all that kind of stuff is, I was doing this stuff back in, 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And people thought I was absolutely losing my mind.
Bit of a trailblazer, like genuinely.
Mm.
obviously, reading about the upbringing, obviously, in Ireland in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I think a lot of your upbringing, I think, would resonate with a lot of people. I was reading bits of that going, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Italy 90 stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but like also like the family troubles and the very, I suppose, Irish relationship with the father.
Yes.
It seems to be an Irish thing with the awkward relationship with the dad
Yeah.
as well, and all that. And obviously, you get very personal about your sister, and obviously the community, the reaction from the community about having a child out of wedlock quite young, because it's a different time,
Yeah.
and all of that. So it's like very personal stuff. How did your family feel about that when you kind of divulged that information?
I think it's probably why it took me so long. I remember speaking to my wife and my daughter at the time, and I says, right, I'm going writing a book, like, and the first thing the alarm bells started to ring. I was like, what are you going talking about? What
Yeah.
stories are you going to tell? My whole aim throughout the whole book was not to demonize anyone. It's to actually give an understanding of something. In order to understand something, you got to be understood. And I was
Especially
trying to, yeah,
the father, yeah, because you were
exactly.
you were on one hand you're saying he wasn't here for me for my important moments. He was too busy, looking at the end of a pint glass as opposed to watching me,
Yeah,
play Ga or whatever.
yeah,
But you also sort of balance it. Well, look, I understand, different time. He was his own man, and it was just a product of his time, perhaps.
yeah. Look, he comes over to England and he comes over to the UK like many,
Yeah,
diaspora that come to London. And he loved his time he loved his time in London. He said the biggest mistake he made was coming back to Ireland. He said he should have
yeah,
stayed. But then he comes back home and, not really fully understanding his journey and what he's actually went through his childhood and generation. So as you said earlier on, the book has got it's like an onion when you really get into it and you actually see the time and energy and how long it's actually taken me to get to that place, because it's also a generational game. I speak about my grandparents, and we're all a product of our circumstances and our environment. And to be angry with my dad or angry with my mum or angry with anybody else, there's got to be a thread of where that has come from. So
yeah.
you start to unravel the thread and you start to look back of, right, why is this? What has caused this? Why is that pain there? Why is that hurt there? And then it brings me back to me, and I was only saying to you earlier on that my grandmother and my great aunts were up in Wood Green, not far from here. And they loved Tottenham and Arsenal at the time. And then my grandmother, she's getting married at Aston Church, just outside Aston Villa. So football was always a big thing with my grandmother, and because they've come to the UK from that place. So when you start to join all the dots together and you start to actually see who you are and where you actually come from, and the type of people that we are, and then getting to the place of, right, there's something really, I've always felt that something really special about Irish people. We're a really special race of people, like, we're very unique. We're wild as goats, but yeah, we're the most smartest and cleverest people. We're so, the land of saints and scholars, But so I was always fascinated by that.
I think the story does resonate with a lot of people, like with, even the honesty you have with the story, and even talking about your ancestors and like difficult kind of historical issues in Ireland and stuff. You talk
Yeah,
about a family member who has a baby and then the baby's just
yeah,
told that, it's incredible, that story. I mean,
yeah,
that was harrowing. I turned around after I read it and said, you'll never believe this. This is crazy. But it really resonated because,
yeah,
the scandals in Ireland and history. So,
yeah,
it just shows how kind of in touch you were with your family past. And I think what I've really gathered from the book as well, how that really resonated with you and kind of pushed you to kind of really understand your Irishness in a sense.
yeah. Look, I was in my family. I was always the black sheep. All the rest of them are blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm the only one with black hair, like so. Must be something to do with the Spanish Armada and my great great granny back in the day, like.
That's
But
what I say. That's what
yeah,
I say.
yeah, exactly.
That's what I
Yeah,
got my
yeah,
dad.
yeah,
That's my mum sent Basque and my
yeah.
Spanish
We call
Armada.
him. We
The
call him.
band
Yeah,
slow in me. That's
yeah.
it.
What do we call you? The sunbed
The
master, is it?
sunbed master.
The
That's
Sunbed
it.
Master. Have you been away?
No, this is it.
Is
Just
it?
it.
That's
It's
it's just got
It's got
that.
sun.
Has it? Yeah, yeah.
It's got
Have you
sun.
been away?
Oh, I'm always away.
Look at Connor, like,
At least
bless
I
him.
get freckles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
we have
Yeah.
Luxembourg
yeah,
to blame for that, do we?
yeah.
A day in the sun.
Yeah,
A day in the sun, yeah,
Oh,
out
we
in the
got
beer garden in Luxembourg, yeah, in the square.
trying to keep this lad in check for Luxembourg. Come on, we got a taxi. Got to get to the ground. Sunning himself.
Yeah,
No, I mean, yeah, your family story resonates. You know,
Hmm.
my family in Wood Green as well. And I was like, Jesus, there's so many parallels. But
Yeah.
so many Irish people have
Yeah.
that same story. Just obviously, you know, just to fast forward a little bit. I remember sort of when I was a kid, when I was playing like all computer games, and I always saw the name David Forde.
Right.
Who's this guy? You know, David Forde.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I was working at Millwall a few years later, and I saw you in action for Millwall, and obviously I think around that time you got the call up
Yeah.
with Ireland, you know. But I didn't realise that you had such a storied journey to get there, like Galway United, Barrytown,
Yeah.
getting fast tracked to West Ham, and you know
Yeah.
who knew? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's another story. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another story.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to give too much away. It is in the book, like brilliant stories, like with your teammates,
Mm.
and all of a sudden, you know, you go to West Ham, and then you go back to Ireland. Stephen Kenny resurrects your career, and we'll talk a bit more about Stephen Kenny later on as well. And then you end up at Cardiff somehow. You know, you're back in the championship with
Yeah.
Dave Jones. But obviously this leads you to Millwall, where you spend 9 years in Millwall.
9 years. Yeah. 342 games.
342 games.
Yeah.
Like absolute like crazy journey there. I mean, with Millwall, I mean, probably a lot of people in Ireland would probably think, oh, Millwall, really? But they wouldn't realise that they have a really strong Irish connection.
Massive Irish connection. Huge Irish connection. And then you look at all the players that play for them. Well, can we call Tony Cascarino Irish now, or is that still where are we on that one? We need to check that one out. Like,
call me Irish.
He looks more
Yeah.
Italian than Tony
That's
just need a medallion on you, Martin. We're laughing. Yeah, Tony Cascarino, Mick McCarthy, Eamon Duffy. Even have Eamon. That took me
Yeah.
when I was working there.
Yeah.
You know, the way on the side, I think it's near the Coblow lane, and like the main stand, and you have the mural of all the players, and you got Eamon Dunphy there. I was thinking, that's mad.
Yeah.
Obviously Mick was player manager.
Yes.
You know, Mick would talk about. He talked about when he was there as a manager, and he had a bad result. He'd have bags of piss thrown at him. You know, which I'm sure you can. Did you ever think though? Obviously, you were ex West Ham player, but you never played for West Ham.
Yeah.
Were you worried about that at all when you went to? Did it even cross your mind or?
Not really. You know, it's I don't know, was it just part of my upbringing or where I actually came from in the west side of Galway, and my dad came from a place at Turlockmore, like, and even, you know, they used to always say, you know, you could walk through Ireland, but you had to run through Turlockmore because you used to have fairs and stuff, and all hell used to break loose. Like. So I grew up in quite a chaotic kind of world. So going to Millwall, going to the likes of West Ham, and I always end up finding myself going to places that was always absolute carnage, you know, or had a reputation for chaos. And it's something that just felt very, very natural to me because there was so much chaos going inside myself that outside chaos was like, oh, this is, you know, natural, it's normal.
Did you find comfort in the chaos?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I enjoyed it, even though it was turbulent. It was so up and down and stuff. But there was just something, you know, the energy of it, and you know, obviously the highs, the extreme highs, and the crushing lows. You know, 1 minute you're high as a kite, you're winning games, and nearly the addiction behind that. You know, winning and losing. You know, it's the very same thing as punishment and reward. You know, you win a game and you get massive rewards. You know, 15 points later and a night out, your happy days. You know, living your best life. And then you lose a game, and my wife's thinking, "Oh my God, he's after losing a game. He's going to come home here now for the weekend, and he'll be emotionally, mentally left the building, even though I'm there physically. But I'd be just thinking of could have done better. Ball that went under my legs, or through my hands, or I should have made that save, or I can't believe that skied that one into the stands." And that was just a constant. That was just, and I used to think that type of thinking or that type of mentality, or you think a high performance mentality or whatever it is, you think that's actually natural, but it was unnatural.
Yeah, I mean the goalkeeper position is probably the most difficult position. You make a mistake 9.9 times out of 10 it results in a goal, and it's all on you. You know, most of the time it's on you.
Yeah.
You know, reading some of the parts of the book where, you know, a guy hits one from 30 yards out and it's top corner, like it's top bins, top corner.
Yeah,
You can do nothing about it. And then, you know, it probably doesn't help when you have Jamie Carragher. I think it was Simon Mignolet, you know, saying, oh, I think he could do better. Jamie Carragher, who never played in goal,
yeah,
doesn't know what it's like.
yeah.
You know,
He
you
could
got to
barely play centre half, like.
barely play centre half. You know, you got a ball.
Someone clip that.
Yep, there you go. Monica, clip that. But like, yeah, you know, and you know, and you're seeing like a ball coming at you over 100 miles per hour, top corner, and then people are blaming you because, you know, from what I've read with a lot of football books, and I think we all have, is that football is very blameless. No, it's not it's this guy's fault, your guy's fault. So a lot, you know, and I was hearing a lot of that in the book where it's like, oh, Forde, like, you know, we fucking do better with that, and obviously one of those resulted with a bit of a scrap with Kenny Jackett.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, which was
Great.
there's actually
One of Martin's highlights.
Where I'm
Like,
from.
yeah,
Exactly. This means this.
I mean,
The
yeah.
jacket off, the most innocent thing.
you want to fight?
They're the kind of places I frequented. Yeah, you take your jacket off.
Glasses
right,
off or jacket off, you're in for it.
You're in.
That was funny actually. When you were funny because I was reading, because as I said, I did work at Millwall. We were talking off air about it, and you mentioned Veronica.
Yeah,
it was a lovely lady, Veronica from Rathcoole,
the Queen of Millwall. Yeah,
yeah. And when you were saying, "Oh, I spoke to Veronica," and I went, "Jesus, you know, I've gone for the manager." And you know, like I went to strangle him. Oh, we've all felt like that. It's like no. I actually went to strangle him. That's a bit different.
That's a bit different. Yeah.
She was great, Veronica, wasn't she?
She was amazing. She's been at Millwall 40 years now. I was 41. She's actually her 60th coming up in July at the Den. So I probably shouldn't say this, but any Irish people should come down. But anyway, yeah, she's 60 now, and she loves football. And it was, I think at the time as well, I just got into the Irish side, and her dad was actually unwell. And we had planned, I can't even remember, I must actually ask her again, did we actually get him to the game, or he just missed out on coming to the game before he passed, like, you know? So she's, she's an absolute lioness. She's a queen.
No. So
even that support network though at a club, it's not a member of family, but they look after you, don't they? Those people are so important at clubs, aren't they?
Massive. It's like those people are probably the biggest impact in my whole career. You know, the kit men, the tea ladies, the security guards. You know, I talk about Martin and Bobby Ward and the impact they had on my career. The impact Veronica had, and Veronica was basically the super agent at the time, because Kenny was clever enough at the time to actually go, this lad's Irish love Irish. You know what I mean? It's like we go away on holidays. Where do we go? We go to an Irish pub. Like, you know what I mean?
and give the English stick about go to an English bar. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah, we do the same thing. We're there. So he gets Veronica to come, and she gets on the phone to me, and she started convincing me and telling me the story about Millwall. But to be honest, she didn't really need it, because I was just, once I heard about it, I was just, something lit my soul up, that I was like, right, I felt I need to go to this club. Like, I actually have to be here. And once I got to Millwall, I felt, Jesus, this feels like I've arrived home.
And I mean, we'll come on to talk about your call up now, but I imagine Veronica had massive pride in you then when you got the call up, like, you know, because she's seen the kind of battle you've gone through to get there. You know, it was always an ambition.
Absolutely. Look, like what you said, the impact Veronica's had on me and my career. My eldest, Michaela, she was going to games and she was bored off her nut. And then Veronica said, oh, why don't you start doing teas and coffees? Then she started working me on the bar. Then she started serving food. Now all of a sudden she goes to university. She does her degree in history, and she comes back and she's delighted, I got a degree and everything else. And I used to be slagging her, saying, what's going to get you jobs is actually Millwall on your CV. She's like, nah, I've done a degree, I've done all this. So she goes off to Universal Studios, and after she comes back from Universal Studios, she does the interview, and they go, oh, here's my degree and everything else. And they were like, oh, you worked at Millwall. And they asked her, what was it like working in Millwall at such a young age, and what that was. Oh, she got the job. Then she left Universal and she went to Warner Brothers. She's like, oh, the degree, and I worked at Universal. They were like, what was it like? If you can work at Millwall, you can actually work anywhere. Honest to God. So then my middle daughter, she did the same thing with Ella. Ella's worked there, and she's just finished her A-levels today. So that's amazing. And so Millwall it's got its reputations, but to be honest to God, it's salt of the earth people. When you get there, its reputation, yeah, there has been times where there has been incidences and stuff, but in general, the club's amazing.
I remember some of the, I think it was Aston Villa. I
The
was there.
Cup's quarter final.
Yeah, and it was like I've just watched 28 Years Later,
Yeah.
where like there's a scene where all the kids is kind of sitting down and it's all kind of kicking off outside, and the parents like everything's fine, and it was kind of like that. I was hidden away in the bowels of the building, and I was hearing stories of like Millwall running into, and it was all kicking off in the stands, but I was protected in the players' lounge, and
Yeah,
I can
looking
hear on
out.
the radio,
Yeah.
like it sounds like great.
That was a great night. We
Yeah.
beat Danny Shea, who scored a header. Shea Given was playing in goal that night,
Yes.
and what was his name? The left back in Zogbia,
Charles and Zogbia, yeah.
Charles and Zogbia. He was he left wing or playing right wing that
Insomnia
night?
is
Yeah,
I think what was his name? Joe Kinnear called him Charles Insomnia
Charles Insomnia.
when he was Newcastle manager.
Yeah.
May he
Well,
rest
I
in
think he
peace.
was asleep that night because he didn't do a thing, and they got a free kick out wide, and he was meant to in swing a left footer, and Millwall fan picks up the ball like that, and he's there, and he turns around to plays for Sheffield Wednesday, little Scottish
Barry
guy.
Bannon.
Barry Bannon.
Yeah.
He was at Villa, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And he turns around to Barry Bannon. I think Barry Bannon must have been a young lad coming through and goes, "Here, you go and take it." And the two of them are having this discussion of like, "I ain't going out there. I ain't going out there. We're not going out and take it." And then you're kind of like, "Oh my God, we actually have these." And to be fair, as a fan, and I always say it, if you ever get a chance, when the den is full on a night game, or even like we got to the playoffs and different things like that, it's an amazing, it's like having 60, 70,000 fans in them. When they get that Monks chant going, when that and it just keeps ringing. And I remember the first time I heard it, and I was just like, it was hypnotic. It was really special.
Would you say Millwall is your club now? It's the one club all you've played for that is your club.
Yeah, 100%. Millwall was the club. Even though I was only there a year at Portsmouth, Portsmouth had an amazing impact on my life as well. But yeah, Millwall would have been the club.
You talk about like belief. I've seen you speak about how good you could have been if you had that self belief. Do you think goalkeepers had to have some way, a bit of like disillusion, that they always think they're better than everyone else, or they're better no matter what anyone says, they could have never made that mistake? Do you think there has to be a bit of illusion? You see it maybe with Pickford a bit. Pickford has that kind of madness to himself.
A bit of disillusion or a bit of madness. I'm trying to work that one out myself here. Yeah, I do believe you do have to be a specific type. You know, you got to be a bit of a funny rhino. You know, you got to have a great bit of wit and a great bit of personality, but you got to have seriously thick skin. And a lot of that, you know, is, you know, people masquerade through different behaviors and different personalities that, you know, even though they might come across as projecting that, but what's behind it is a totally different thing. Yeah. But for goalkeepers, I think self-belief and confidence and a conviction in terms of knowing how good you actually are plays a massive role.
And you are like, if you came through now, how do you think you would dealt with the social media struggles of things? Because like, if you make one mistake, maybe 20 years ago, you might get a bit of grief in the ground or on the street. Some might say, to you, "Oh, you should have saved that." But now you go on your phone, especially if you play for a club like Millwall, thousands and thousands of fans, you'd be saying, "David Forde, sell him in the morning, he's useless, get him gone," even though it's just one mistake.
Yeah, lucky enough, I don't know whether I was lucky enough or whatever, but I came through from the era of papers into social media. And even now, I think my social media have like 3,000 followers on Instagram, where if I did it in a tight, you're probably looking at, could have 100, 150, 200,000. But because I was struggling to deal with my own stuff, I didn't need thousands of others dropping in grenades. So it was kind of like, right, I just need to kind of distance myself for this. But that was only after I got a bit wise after Cardiff, because I went from Ireland over to Cardiff and I was desperate to play, and the internet had just kind of come out at the time and stuff. It was that real, you probably don't remember that, you'd sign in and dial in and it'd be like,
yeah,
and you'd be there
the
for
dial up, yeah.
ages.
And you always
dial-up.
knew that's not connecting
Yeah.
properly. You always
Yeah.
knew by the sound.
And you had chat clubs. So Cardiff had Cardiff bluebirds.com or something, and they'd have all their aliases on the different things and stuff like that. Like, and I'd be always so insecure in myself, kind of going, Jesus, am I good enough to play? And I was always waiting for a validation or a well done or a reassurance, you're doing well and stuff, because that never came to me through my father and relationships on that level. So I was always looking externally for external validation from especially senior men figures in my life, no more than fans or whatever else. So any little G up or well done or anything had a major impact. Well, that could be from anyone, but from anyone also it had the adverse effect. It could have been like an absolute knockout punch, solar plexus. So I remember being under a lot of pressure with finances and money, mortgages and different things. And I explained that in the book in terms of properties in 2008 and the crash and having a young kids and a young family. Everybody has the visualization that, oh yeah, every footballer is set up for life.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And it's like myself today. I still have to work today, but there's a beauty in that because it keeps me up and it keeps me going every morning. You know, that 2017 they discovered that there was one of five things: alcoholics, drug addicts, gamblers, divorced, or there was one more, it's not coming to me, or divorced. I think I might have said that already. But anyhow, and I was like, right, I didn't want to be one of those stats. So they were serious stats, and I was like, right, that's not actually going to happen. So when you look back at that time, I used to be up middle of the night searching things, going looking for, oh geez, he's good, and then I'd hear, oh no, he's not good, he's brutal, he'll go back home. So then when the internet actually came out and the lads were like Instagram, Twitter, all this, and I'd be sitting on the back of the butch observing and watching, and I could see the impact on each of the players, their desperation for their own validation, for their own approval. And then when someone didn't get it or they get hammered in it, the spiral they'd go into it and how it would affect their confidence. So me protecting myself from that time, I was like, right, I'm not actually going near this because I don't actually have the emotional and mental strength to hold that.
Yeah.
And it's a different generation also, because now the younger generation come up, they've grown up with it from such a younger age. It's like water off a duck's back. But then you'd have to question is, well, is it really? You know,
Yeah.
who's brave enough to actually come out and actually say it?
Social media, a lot of it is, and this is ironic because we're a social media channel, but a lot of it is superficial, isn't it? It's, you know, everything's great on top, but below you don't know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, that was the idea of writing a book.
Yeah.
Is that, like, you know, footballers, we do an extraordinary thing, but we're ordinary people. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed, your wife Ali, she deserves a medal.
Jesus, don't be telling me that.
But what I mean is, like, just going from obviously West Ham back to Galway. You meet her in Galway,
Yeah.
and then she comes with you to Cardiff. Doesn't work out at Cardiff. Dave Jones. That was a funny story with Dave Jones.
And she was 5 months pregnant.
And then, you know, you're off down to London to Millwall. She tried, like, she went with you, like, which was, and you know, you say in the book that you were prepared. If you say no, it's fine. But she went with you all the way to help you, you know, realize your dream, be a number one in the UK, get to Ireland eventually. So she, you know,
she's been my biggest supporter. You know, she's been my luck, really. To be honest, once I went to Ali, my whole look changed. Everything started to take a different outlook. Before that, excuse me, I was returning back to Ireland, going playing Gaelic football for Galway, hoping to win an All Ireland centre midfield. I love that. Next life, but anyhow, and that was the dream. Go back teaching, etc., go back home. But yet there was always that sense of unfinished business. Then Stephen comes on the scene, Ali's there, and you know, started to find my way again. I started to say, right, what am I going to do in my life? I was kind of finished with football. So Stephen comes along and he says, right, you want to sign for Derry? And she was like, right, David, just go for it. Then Cardiff comes along and I says, oh, you're pregnant. Michaela was 10 or 11 at that stage. She was like, yeah, we'll all move over, we'll all go. And they were massive for a man to get that type of support and actually know that right, don't have to be commuting, we're all in here. And even though it wasn't easy and stuff, but what we've managed to achieve and do together has been amazing. she's an absolute hero.
Absolutely. I mean,
Mm.
you know, when you look at footballers now, you get one contract. If you're a Premier League club, you're set for life. They're almost manufactured. It's like they're not real. It's like they're being just built in a factory somewhere. Where you know, there you are going into Millwall. You finally make it as a number one in the UK, and you're very real. You're a family man. You've worked as a postman. You've worked in a bar,
Yeah.
you've worked. You're studying to become a teacher. You've got a wife who's pregnant, come with you. So like you've a very real background to you, and yet you still want to make it in the kind of surreal world of football.
Yeah.
And you've been through the trials of tribulation. You know what it's like to
Yeah.
have hold down a proper job.
Yeah.
You know, which is something probably a lot of players now just wouldn't have a clue. You know what that is like.
Yeah, I think there's certain probably players through the years. The one that's kind of comes to my mind is Vardy, where Vardy was, he'd kind of similar kind of
Yeah.
bringing, but they're few and far between now, I suppose, in terms of academies and you know how global the game has actually got in terms of football and in terms of sport. And even the work I was doing back with Crystal Palace Academy and working with their parents, their coaches, and the players around their mindset and their well being, you could see the impacts that was had all around and stuff. But all you could see how it's such a conveyor belt. And where I really seen is in terms of my own career and actually realizing that, Jesus, I've been so blessed, so lucky to actually make it as a footballer. My son was 8 at the time. He's 14 now, and he was playing in Beckenham Town, and we're down the local fields, and he's just running around having a crack, and I'm down there with the dads, and I'm standing there with an umbrella. Dads are giving off about, oh, your son should be playing, he's not playing, and you'd swear we were watching the Champions League final, but it was great fun. And I remember just looking around and just seeing absolute kids everywhere. And I was like, every one of them has that dream to pull on their club shirt or their country shirt and play a professional sport. And then you realize that 0.0001% make it. And I was just sat there for a minute. I was just thinking, wow, this is amazing. Even though it took me so long to get there, but it's been a wild and such an adventure.
Do you think that somebody could take your path now? Like we said at the top of the podcast, you made your competitive debut for Ireland at the age of 33. You were a very late bloomer with the professional game in England.
Yeah.
How old were you when you signed for West Ham? Sorry, not West Ham, for Millwall.
I was 28.
28.
Yeah.
You know, do you think anyone would be able to make that journey now, just in 2025?
That's a good question, actually. Never really thought of that. Look, everything's possible.
Yeah.
I believe everything's possible. The probability of it happening is probably getting lower, just in terms of where the game has actually gone, just in terms of how the degree of professionalism that's come into the game, in terms of the separation between amateur and professional. In terms of the development of players technically, tactically, and also now in terms of the awareness coming in around emotionally and mentally, how players are even evolving again. So players coming into football from a later stage is, I think it's going to be a very, very rare thing. Yeah.
It would be a rare thing though, wouldn't it? Like you think about it, you didn't play underage, did you, for Ireland? I mean, that itself is amazing. Then you've gone on and capped at senior level.
Yeah, I didn't get a sniff.
Yeah.
Didn't get a sniff.
Crazy.
Well, I tried to get in the Irish school.
I think Killian Phillips is the only one who's somewhat similar because he was never in an academy set up in Ireland. Played Leinster Senior League and like was amateur level until he was 16, and then with Drogheda what were semi-pro at the time, and then he went to Crystal Palace at 18. Like, and he's very late. Like, he's seen as like a once off now at the moment. Like, he's played for Ireland after. Like, he didn't play. I think he got released by St Kevin's when he was younger. Yeah. He was at other schoolboys clubs, and like he was kind of seen as someone. He's gone to England. He'd probably go to England, and he'd end up coming home after a couple of years. But he showed that like you can, if you just put the work in, you can eventually get there and have that mentality that. He's shown that he's probably had hardships as younger in his career, getting sent away by schoolboy clubs. But a lot of lads really don't seem to have it very rosy the whole way up. And like, if you don't really have them setbacks early, it kind of builds that mentality. Do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think he was that. We saw in his post-match press conference, didn't we, how he reacted to his debut, and was probably like I would be, to be honest.
Yeah, it was.
You'd be absolutely buzzing with your family and stuff because you probably didn't think it was going to come. So
Another hour in the suntan
I
bed
think
for me, yeah.
there's a lot of lads we see that like I would say go over, and there's a lot of lads you think maybe might play forward. And like Killian wasn't even, he was in that past under 21 setup, and you would have said he was fifth or sixth choice centre mid, and then all of a sudden he's suddenly overtaken 5 or 6 lads. Obviously, there's a lot to go between career paths where you go after club, but it shows that like even if like he wasn't really, he was playing for the 21s. He played a couple of times. I know he got man of the match against Italy, which was very impressive. But if they had a full squad, he wouldn't have started. And then all of a sudden, he took over all these lads, which is quite an incredible feat, to be fair.
Speaking of Ireland, actually, I suppose we should get to that.
Yeah.
I was laughing when you tell the story. You're on the bus and you get a phone call from Alan Kelly. We've actually had Alan. Alan's a top bloke,
Great guy, yeah.
great guy.
Yeah.
We had him for a live show there last year, and you're on the bus. And I think you said beforehand you were always checking out Sky Sports News, the yellow bar,
Yeah.
to see if you're on it. And I think I heard, I don't think it's on the bus, I think it's another podcast where you had retired from international football before even getting...
Yeah. They said, it was actually very funny. He said, you retired from football twice, or you retired from international football before you made your debut.
Yeah. I've had enough of this.
I've had enough. I'm done. I'm retiring.
But yeah, I mean, to be fair, like you're thinking, okay, like I'm in my early 30s. It's unlikely, although everything about your career is unorthodox.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. Like it's unorthodox. It's a complete unique journey. But you're on the bus, and we've all read autobiographies, and of course, footballers have a lot of time in their hands, and they like a bit of crack and they like to play pranks.
Yeah.
So you get a phone call from Alan Kelly, who's the goalkeeping coach at the time.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hello, I'm here from the FAI, and on behalf of Giovanni Trapattoni, I'd like to welcome you to call you up for the Irish squad." And of course, immediately your head goes to right. Who's taking the piss? Who's fucking around?
Yeah. Mr. Suspicion and Paranoia.
Yeah.
Like
I
I'm
mean,
looking through the gaps of the bus, going, "Who's stitching me up here?" Yeah.
But that's sort of like football player banter.
Yeah.
Banter 101, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretend to be somebody like to ring you up and stitch you up. Oh yeah, we're here for an interview, or we're here to call you up to whatever. Like so, but when you realise that this is actually a genuine call, I mean, I'll let you tell the story, but the emotion, the pride.
Yeah, look, it was. I can still actually feel myself sitting on the bus. I can actually still picture out when I look out over the moors where that actually is. If you drove me there tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, that's actually where I got the phone call.
Right there.
Right there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember just thinking, right, I have to actually. This is actually genuine. Like this is actually Alan Kelly. Because coming up to the game, we were warming up and there was rumours of Ireland going to be watching whatever. And I remember going out to Turf Moor, because you come out the corner flag, and the old stand over the other side, and it was the old type of stand where it's a shadow. You can't really see who's behind it even during the day. But I seen this guy with a flat cap and wax jacket. And he looks like he was going in shooting for the day. So we get the phone call from Alan, and he's got a big booming voice. And he said, David, just on behalf of Giovanni Trapattoni and Marco Tardelli. And I'm like, this is really happening. And probably two of the biggest names in world football ever have such massive reputations in the game and so passionate about the game that it's like, what is this actually really happening? We're finally here, because there's a great saying: in order to gain anything, first you have to lose it. So by me surrendering to the fact that, right, I'm done with Ireland, I'm finished, it just freed up so much. I got so loose in that, I got so free in that, so that allowed me then to kind of just be myself and just start to play my best football. Then all of a sudden the lads are looking at me, and there's tears rolling down my face, and they're like, shit, has someone actually died? 40, your number one goalkeeper, 6'4", and he's like a baby bawling in the chair. And I come off the chair and they were like, are you all right? And I was like, just got called up for Ireland, lads. All the lads are like, cards went flying everywhere. They were all absolutely delighted for us. going down telling the manager, and then Tony Burns, who was like my surrogate father, was my goalkeeping coach, and his parents came from Cork and stuff. He was very, very proud Irishman as well, and he came up and he just gave me an absolute bear hug, and we actually just had crack on the bus on the way home, and then I was just ringing everyone, mum, dad, family.
But did you not think? I know you said you'd given up on Ireland. But were you in your head like all probably footballers do, going, "Was Shea's first choice? Was Kieran Westwood would have been second choice?" You're not thinking, "Surely I can do enough. I'm playing well enough here. Surely I can." Did you have no sort of inkling in your head that I can get into the squad?
I thought I had no chance. I was like, obviously Shea's number one, and then Kieran was coming through at that time, and he was only a shoe in to be the new number one. He was being groomed into that position, and I thought, all I just kept thinking was, right, just give me one cap. I'd be happy with one.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, get to live me dream once, get me first cap, and I managed to live me dream 24 times, which was surreal. And the maddest thing about it is actually Martin Byrne I spoke to earlier on, who was one of the security guards, and he was brilliant. And he texted me and he says, "All right, Tiger." And I says, "All right, Martin, what's the crack?" And he said, "Do you realise," he said, "that he goes, I don't think you realise," he used to go, "Davey, I don't think you realise that you get in at 31, 33, and then you go on to play 24 games." He said, "That does not happen." He says, "Usually you might get 1, 2, 3 or 4 max and you sail off, but you actually came in and went that way." And I was actually going, "Geez, Martin, that's actually a great way of actually looking at it." So it was, I didn't actually think that I'd get any answer your question basically.
And what's that like then when you the call up like now if we see players calling up like the FAI communication stuff, the video the lads arriving for the hotel and coming in from the cars and that kind of stuff, and then you see them all engaging and high five and then they're playing darts and pool and everything like that. What's that like when you come into that squad? Like you'd know the names, wouldn't you, of some of them high profile players? How are you feeling coming into that? And what's the welcome like? What's the buzz around the hotel? How do you feel your time?
Yeah, it's one of Ireland's golden generations. Some absolute how many centurions came through? Shea, Robbie, Duffer, Kevin Kilban, John O'Shea. Some serious players and playing at some serious clubs in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And you're coming into it and you're a bit edgy. You're kind of a bit like, all right, well, they're Premier League, you're only Championship. So in your mind, you're going into the old comparison website.com, and you're just trying to figure out, what's your position in the pecking order and I get to play, but yet you're so proud to be called up to Ireland. And then you actually see how much Ireland meant to those players, how much Ireland meant to Shea and Robbie and Duffer and everyone that was in that squad. It meant so much to be with Ireland and to be in that room. And I always remember, the connection at 2012, then getting called up to go to the Euros in 2012. And then we're over at 2012 over in Poland, and you're seeing, what was it?
Feels about right, was it?
Yeah, they got no. There was one famous flag. You probably
Merkel,
know
Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel. We got long
Things are working. Yeah. Things are working. We got the bailout. And we've got Whelan Longcoats.
We got long coats. Yeah, and that time, as players, we'd be going to the games in the buses, and we'd be looking out the window and just seeing waves and waves of Irish fans hanging out with trams and buses, waiting outside hotels. Yeah. And doing the most random and funniest things and flags and banners, and we'd be all just like, we should be probably focusing on the game, but it was just amazing.
I mean, you make your debut against the North. I think you're 20 minutes against the North.
Yes.
I think we battered them that
20
game.
20 minutes, 39 seconds, and
5-0.
Don't blame you.
Yeah.
I'd have it.
I'm down to seconds at this stage. I don't have that many caps.
100%. You're coming on. You're getting ready to come on. I mean, we told before that you're going to get a few minutes if we're well up. I mean, probably no one expects us to beat Northern Ireland 5-0.
Oh, I did.
He did, yeah. He was only 2 at the time, but yeah.
Yeah. He came out with a womb first prophecy.
Yeah, little tricolour.
Yeah. Couldn't beat Northern Ireland.
I remember that. I was actually supposed to come over for that, but I had a prior engagement and I was raging. I was happy, but I was raging, missed that. But anyway, but obviously, like, probably didn't expect to be. And, you know, a trap you wouldn't normally, because it was a competitive game, was in the Nations Cup,
Yeah.
which we eventually won after the Icelandic Triangular Tournament. But anyway,
Yes.
so obviously you think, well, we're way out, so on you go. I mean,
Yeah.
what's that like? Like, who tells you, 40, you're up?
Different managers are different, you know. Some give you a heads up, some don't give you a heads up, and I wasn't even expecting to get a run out. You know, I don't know how or where it came about. And you're probably thinking at that time it would have been, I was wearing number 23, so it would have been one Shaven, one Kieran in 16, and me in 23. So next thing, Alan Kelly and Marco Tardelli come over and say, "Get warmed up, you're coming on." And I was like, "You're joking me." And you know what the mad thing about it is, I had actually the Galway colours on.
Really? Oh,
The jersey.
Oh, yeah,
It was maroon and white.
Yeah.
It was the County Galway colours. And I'm actually going onto the pitch looking down going, I'm actually in me. So I did get to play in me
Yeah.
me little final, like, you know.
Couple of miles away from Croker.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah, we're there. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming onto the pitch and then high-fiving Shay to come onto the pitch.
Yeah.
And we absolutely battered them at the same time, because I think they had a lot of problem with injuries and
I would have battered them anyway.
yeah, it's true.
I know the fans boycotted it, didn't they? Because it was that
did,
time where we
Yeah.
were stealing players from.
Yes, that was it, James.
Stealing
The whole
players.
James McLean.
Yeah, giving them the
Yeah.
birthright.
Yeah. This whole thing with James.
Don't clip that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stick that in there.
Yeah, Shane Duffy. And all
Yeah,
that.
it was all that going on.
Yeah.
And I just walked onto the pitch and I was just thinking the size of this pitch and the size of the stadium and the magnitude of this game, and I was just like 5-0 up. I don't know if they even came into our half,
Did you
but
make
for
a
20 minutes I was just like, Jesus, I can't concede one, you know. Yeah,
Did you make a save? Did you even get to make a save?
Did you touch the ball?
I could have pulled over the deck chair. I think I'm in the first row, and got touch of it a few times. I think that was about the height of it, you know, a few goal kicks and stuff, and
And then a few days later, we won the tournament, didn't we? Well,
Scotland,
we call it
yeah.
a tournament.
It was a tournament.
Well, is this a myth as well? We need honesty here. I'm sure you'll be very honest anyway. Did you celebrate, obviously, that? 'Cause, like, there's different kind of rumours, isn't there, that, you know, lads kind of broke ranks and went out because they said we're not going to win anything with Ireland, so we're out tonight. Can you remember anything about that? There must have been a few lads who liked a night out in that squad.
oh yeah, there was every night was a fucking night out. Yeah, it was funny. The funny thing about it is, I remember coming up into the squad, and it's such a surreal thing when you come into an international setup, and you're flying on planes and jets, and you've got security teams, and you're getting drivers bringing you here, there, and everywhere, and it's just elevated. The whole thing is elevated. So I remember coming up we had our own floor at the hotel and security, and you're just thinking, geez, this is next level. And I remember going one day down because my room was near the exit, so I thought family were coming, so I just go down the fire exit and stuff. So I come up to the fire exit, and it was probably illegal now to be doing it. They were cable tied,
Oh, right, yeah.
so we couldn't get out the back. So I'd gone up, and I was like, right, oh, is that to stop people like coming in? And I went up to the security guards, and they were like, no, that's to stop lads from getting out.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's mad.
I'm glad that's continued from, like, you know, you hear the lads in the 90s and stuff with breaking out all the time, going out to,
Yeah, I mean,
to places. So I kind of like that tradition.
I think some of the backroom staff, I think from what I've, and there's a story, I think, where you're at Millwall and you sneak out and you see one of the coaches, and Kenny Jackett is sitting
Head under the window, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, you know, you're crawling along. I often think that some managers in England would be almost disappointed if you didn't at least
Absolutely.
try.
Yeah.
As that camaraderie going out and,
Yeah.
you know, you're all together. Like, to be like, what do you mean you didn't try to break out? Like, what's going on here? I think some of them would almost expect it.
Yeah, no, look, in terms of building camaraderie, esprit de corps, you know, teamwork, brotherhood, whatever way you want to call it, But sure, it's like everything. Everything has a fine line. You only realise it after you cross it. You know?
Probably shouldn't do that
Yeah,
next time.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Maybe we just had one too many games. You know?
Um,
Yeah.
so obviously you get your first start in a 2-0 win over Italy in Liège, which I remember watching that I think I watched that in Balham actually, south side of the river, Martin, just so you know. And just being like, your mates, we were on a real good run there actually. I thought, we were really good, very professional performance. 2-0, like they never really, I don't think they really got into it. And I must admit, when we got to Euro 2012, I thought we were going to upset a lot of people.
So did we.
That brings me on to our next question.
We were unbeaten in 16 or 18 games.
Something like that. Yeah, we had
and we had 14 clean sheets or something.
Yeah, nil draw, I think, in Budapest before we went
Yes.
over. And
Yep.
you think, all right, whatever. But we looked so solid going into it.
Yeah.
What do you think went wrong?
Probably the group of that. We had probably, in my view, Spain, they've been best team ever. Italy got to the final, so both finalists, and Croatia were a top 8 team in the world at the time. Even though we're in a great group, and you're always like, right, we'd always fancy Ireland for an upset and stuff. We were on great form. We went over there, prepared unbelievably well. We did all the right things, but we just came up against some phenomenal teams.
Yeah.
Honest to God, like that Spanish team. We played them. I think it was the third game of the group game in Gdansk, I think it was. And even though they'd made some changes, but I'd never seen a team playing in first or second gear. They were absolutely cruising. And to see what they went and did, was it 2 Euros in a World Cup?
Yeah.
It was
2000. I was in Spain for that 2008 World Cup 2010. Remember Torres pulling up the final, and then 2012. I mean, the reason why I ask, I mean, it probably seems a bit ridiculous. How could you not get out of a group of Spain, Italy, Croatia? Come on, pull it up. What I mean is, like, back home, there was. There were stories coming out of discontent, disquiet amongst the lads. Maybe the preparation wasn't great. John Delaney, better be careful what we say about him. Gets listless letter through the door, allegedly.
You might get a few tickets.
He's your man for the tickets. Just say
He's the new JD.
You see this man outside with a card machine and a briefcase. Just saying. Oh no, mobile phones now because it's on him.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, like there was all these stories of discontent, disquiet. Apparently the team. I mean, you were there. This is just what we read. Team hotel was in the middle of a nightclub and all that. Did you feel? Obviously, it was your first, and we'll get to it later. Only major tournament with Ireland. Did you feel that the atmosphere in the camp? Obviously, first time being away with Giovanni Trapattoni. He's Italian. They have different ways of doing things. Irish lads, when a Italian manager, it's not like you're meeting up for a couple of days and going away. Like
exactly,
you're together for about
6 weeks.
6 weeks,
yeah.
And it's a bit like probably living with your dad and granddad at the same time. Very strict dad and granddad at the same time. Yeah. Like, do you think the balance was wrong, or did you feel that in the camp that maybe it wasn't as happy as it could have been, or?
Yeah, 10 days, 11 days away in international camps are hard going. It can be hardcore at times. Trying to keep yourself entertained, trying to keep yourself rested, trying to keep yourself sane, trying to keep yourself prepared for the game. There's so many things in it, and then you're trying to look out for your wife and your kids and your family back home. So many expectations for you to perform. There's so many things going on in that space. So then you actually go, right, here we go, 6 weeks. Yeah. All of a sudden you arrive in for 6 weeks, frustrations start to build, people get tetchy, people get edgy, all those different layers and elements, a lot of traveling. So when I look back to that time, for me, there was very little pressure on me because I was third choice goalkeeper. It was going to be highly unlikely that I was going to play. But yet, coming into the Irish team at that time, and everybody used to say that, international football must be easy, you just go. I remember Scholes would be talking about the Man United players, and it'd be like, international football, it's only a jolly up, you just go and train and play games. But international football comes into a whole different level of intensity, from the press, from the media, eyes watching, and the standard in training. It was like, a club level, you train all week and build up into your week. Every day was like training, it was like a match day. in training.
Mm.
And it took me actually a long time to actually get ready for that and prepare for that. So when you look at doing that over 6 weeks and stuff, and that kind of pressure cooker environment with different personalities, different ways of doing things, different cultures. Then we went to Montecatini as well, just outside. It was like a Roman spa where Trapp used to bring all his players for.
Completely isolated.
Completely isolated. Beautiful place, but it was just pretty archaic, and we were kind of like, right, what are we doing here?
No Irish pub.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You hear
no
back,
Dubliner.
you hear like the stories of Jack in USA '94, and he had a
Yeah.
Guinness barrel, and senior players would come in, Ronnie Whelan, yeah, you'd like a Guinness, have a Guinness,
Yeah.
settle it down. But it just seems to me, and I mean this with all respect to Trapattoni. I've met him a couple of times, gentleman, top manager. It just sounds like he didn't for a long space of time. He just didn't quite get the Irish lads, and the Irish lads didn't quite get him. And England at the same tournament struggled with Capello.
I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think that only kind of came about towards the end.
Yeah,
Because when
fair.
I came into the squad, you could see the lads absolutely adored him. When Trapp left, the lads were absolutely good. All the players absolutely adored Trapp. Trapp was a phenomenal man. And he got it and understood it more so than anything. And I think you look at probably little incidences around certain scenarios and stuff. But there was a lot of times he turned a lot of blind eyes to it too. He was a very smart, he was a very shrewd man. He understood the mentality more than what people make out. And you don't speak 8 languages and win tournaments and all, and not understand a culture or a nation or a set of people. And I remember distinctly coming into one of the team meetings and looking at how he looked at things with such a fine detail. So he comes in and he used to do this thing around like double marque in terms of throw-ins. You always get one in front, one behind, and this was like he was so repetitive on certain things. And he used to always say every little detail, little detail. And I was like, right, that's interesting. So my first game away was I think Uruguay. No, Macedonia. I think Robbie scored in the 80th, 98th minute or
Scored
something like
from
that.
far out
2011.
as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about 30 yards out, 40 yards out.
Yeah.
Great goal. So we beat them 1-0. And I'm one of the last into the airport, and Trapp was coming through. And sure, he must be late 60s, 70s. And I was like, jeez, I'll wait for Trapp and see does he get through or And next thing I just started chatting to him. He puts his bag through the security and just chatting to him. And I was like, what's the crack with every little detail? Like, what's going on? And he just said to me in 80 or 90 something, he lost a Champions League final on one little detail that he knew that he should have told someone that they do a near post delivery. The man dives in near post and scores, and he lost the cup final. So he understood that the finest of margins. And lads really responded to him. At the end of the day, it mightn't have been the most attractive, but it was effective, and there was no problem when you're winning games and you're being competitive. And like everything else, everything has its time.
Yeah.
And it came to its time.
And of course, in football, when things are going great, we turn a blind eye. When it's going bad, every little detail to use is like, oh, well, why did you do that?
100%.
Why was this happening now?
Yeah.
And all that. So Trapp goes. In comes Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane. Bad cop, and was it bad cop?
Bad and badder cop.
Bad, yeah.
I'm joking.
I mean, like that must have been a bit mad. You set out. You start the book with you're playing in Celtic Park, and you're having a row with Roy Keane. And what was that like? What was he? I think since, as we say, when an era ends and it ends quite badly as it did for Martin O'Neill and Keane in the end, everything gets like blown out and there's a microscope of everything. What was he that? Explosive in training? Was he that all the time?
Not really, no. Not really. Roy used to come in and just observe and watch a lot of the time, and he wasn't one to come in ranting and raving even at half time. Martin was the one really that would have, if he was disappointed or he was upset, he was the one, it was Martin that was actually driving that. Roy, I was going to say, he would have just supported him.
Of course, yeah.
In that role, but yeah, he wasn't one that was coming in absolutely.
Yeah.
tearing ceilings
Do you
down.
not think would Roy have had that little thing in his head, just wishing he was that main man? Do you think there was that little bit in him that he wishes he was in Martin O'Neill's position? He was the one doing the ranting and raving at half time.
I never got that impression from Roy. I always got the impression that he actually has loads of respect for Martin. He had a lot of respect for Martin, and you could see there was a real connection through the Nottingham Forest days and through the Brian Clough days. And the respect they had for each other on that level was, he had massive respect for Martin O'Neill, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably one of the few people that Roy still talks about fondly. You know, and you hear him,
Yeah.
he's doing the podcast
Yeah,
circuit
they
as
were
well.
very close.
Yeah, and he talks about that a lot. Obviously, you know, your career with Ireland is starting to wind down, and you play your final match against Belarus.
Hmm.
And you know, I found it fascinating in the book because you seem to go a lot on instinct. You know, you seem to have a good feeling for things. Oh, I don't think this is working out here. And then obviously things will happen out of the blue you don't expect. That's just life. But you're there with Kieran Westwood in the searing heat in Turner's Cross.
Yeah.
I think we were 2-0 down at the time.
Yeah, we were having a disaster. Yeah.
We never seem to do well in the final match before a tournament.
Yeah.
You always lose it.
Yeah.
But and then Kieran's like, oh well, you're asked to come on for the last 20 minutes. Shea's in goal. It was actually Shea's last game for Ireland as well.
Was it?
It was. And then basically you go on and you're like, no. Kieran goes, well, that's me done. And no, trust me, this is like a token gesture. Not to diminish an appearance for Ireland, but they're going to let you down easily, and you kind of felt that. And you meet Martin, and it kind of ends a little bit. You know, you get your call up for Ireland. It's very emotional, but it's very warm, very emotional, brilliant moment for yourself. But at the end, seems very cold and clinical. But you took it very well.
I suppose to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Yeah,
You know,
you
and
knew basically.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, I'm a very sensitive man. You know, and I just felt that I've gone a lot on my own instinct and my own intuition, and it served me well. And coming up to that game, and I remember just arriving. It was actually the weekend of beaten by Barnsley. We got beaten by Barnsley in the playoff final. So all of a sudden, if we get back promoted to the championship, my whole career changes, a whole different trajectory.
Trajectory.
That's the one. That was hard.
Normally I'm the one that butchers the words.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's a whole different thing. And then by the time you're dealing with that disappointment of losing the playoff final, we got beat by Barnsley 3-1. And you're in total disarray. You're like, right, where's my career going? Then I come over to Cork, rat racing around. You're trying to get, your medical stuff done, and you're wondering who's in the squad, who's not in the squad. And I remember thinking that, yeah, I've played, was it 5 or 6 games of the qualifiers?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, right, that gave me some kind of solace. But for some strange reason, once I arrived at the team hotel, and then we trained at Turner's Cross, and I was just like, right, this isn't adding up here for me. And I kind of started to realize that, right, this isn't going to happen. And then obviously that moment with Kieran, which was a lovely moment between myself and himself. And then afterwards, getting pulled into the office at Turner's Cross. It was like a bunker. It was like a war zone. There was just papers and stuff everywhere. Like, you could name it, memorabilia. Like, and I'm sat here thinking, well, I'm actually just getting lollipopped here from the Euros. And yeah, it was actually it was very isolating. It was very, very lonely place, with inside myself. And I remember coming out afterwards, and I remember just seeing, as I walk out the door, I see the Irish fans to my left, and the mothers and the kids, and they were all just delighted. They hadn't got a clue who's who or what's what nearly. They were just delighted to be there, as you're looking up to your idols and seeing players coming out. And then over to the right, you could see the press and the media, and they were like rabid dogs, like trying to get a story or trying to get a scoop, and they were like roaring and shouting. And I just had this total kind of bubble moment. I was like, right, this is too much for me at the moment to be going into that place. And that showed the journey I was actually on from where I would have totally reacted to that, and would have been hurt and bitter and angry and frustrated and started blaming, as you said, the blame culture in football. It would have been everybody else's fault bar myself, and I just took myself into that kind of silent place inside myself, and I went and I signed some kids for the kids and for the mums and stuff, and it was actually a really lovely moment. It was really, really nice. It was a real gentle, soft moment, and I got a lot of solace from that moment. And then I could just get onto the plane or onto the bus and back to the hotel. And I remember Seamus talking to me, and he was like, "Geez, David," he said, "I can't believe you're not going to France." And I was like, "Neither can I."
I remember that I was at Turner's Cross that night, and I remember I was in the press pack in a sense, but I remember just
You were
being,
one of those dogs.
I was, but I was just I'd never seen anything like it. In all seriousness, I just because obviously the phone kind of confirmed squad, and I saw you, and then I saw you go and do that, and I just thought that is amazing that you did it, because I could just see there's, like you said, the kids' faces just lit up, because lads who actually went to the Euros or were going, they it's easy, isn't it? Put your head down and just get on the bus, headphones in and stuff. But that you did that, and I thought you must have been at a very low place in a sense. But you went and done that and made like those kids' days and things like that. I thought it was just amazing.
Very cathartic moment, maybe perhaps in the face of adversary. Your adversary, that's not the word I'm looking for. Adversary. You are, you crushing news, but you go out, you see these kids. You go, oh, well, you say it in the book. It's not your fault.
Yeah,
here you are. I know some of the, not to dig any senior players out, but some of them just went past, didn't sign it. But you went out, you signed everything. You showed your class essentially.
Thank you. Yeah.
And which is not easy to do in a situation like. And you're in that moment. You're disappointment, whatever. But like, you showed your class, went out, signed everything, and you left the bigger man. And sort of what the Irish lads went off. Did you still sit at home, watch all the matches?
Yeah.
Got behind them.
So I ended up going on first time ever onto Sky Sports News on Yellow Bar. Yellow Bar. David Forde is commentating on the Irish game here tonight and stuff, and I was just thinking the irony of it all, me here looking at Yellow Bars flipping tables in at the Millwall training ground because I didn't get in the Irish team, and now here I am on Sky doing an Irish game,
Amazing.
So that was quite funny, and to see look. Massive Irish fan. Look, 80s, 90s, they were amazing times. Jack Charlton, like ole, like they were magical times. So to be watching, take your shoe off and them serenading the ladies and the things, and just to see the magic that the Irish fans brought. And then there's actually a great, if you ever get it, it's a letter of love from the French fan to the Irish, and what the Irish brought to the French and stuff like that. That was one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've ever written or seen.
No, it was a great.
And I thought that was amazing. And it summed it all up.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for watching at home. Don't forget, Being the One is out in bookshops. It's also online. There is a link to buy the book. It's a great read. We haven't even touched the stories on here because we want to leave it for this book. There is a link for it below, so do grab yourself a copy of that. We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Head over to our Facebook, Instagram and our Twitter account, and you can head over to lansdowne.ie. Are you subscribed yet, David?
I will be.
Good man. See, even David Forde is not. I'm
in.
So do subscribe to the channel. David, if it's good enough for David Forde, it's definitely good enough for you guys out there. We're going to leave it anyway. This is Lansdowne, the voice of the fans, and we'll see you on the next one.